Hello, welcome to Lackluster Reactions. I'm your Lackluster Reactor, here today for my final review of Ishura. I walked into this show not quite sure what kind of show we were getting, but walked out satisfied and looking forward to a season 2. It was a battle of wills which brought about death, a game of puppets where everything went as planned. So, let's put my final thoughts on both the characters and the plots onto words. Anyway, starting with the plot, we begin with a relatively simple premise. Fantasy world, there are many beings who are stronger than average people, referred to as Shuras, one who might be the true hero of this world. Circumstances just happen to fall in a way where they are forced to fight each other, kill each other, all of it just an excuse plot for a simple story. Until it is not. Season ends with the revelation that the story is a literal excuse plot, set up by the kingdom and many of the background players in order to have the most dangerous creatures in the world, the Shura, end up in circumstances to kill each other on opposite sides of a civil war. And let me tell you, this changed everything about the show. In all honesty, just having the show be the poorly planned war between two sides, with no one's plan being really that thought out, it was middling. But I was here for the death game. Finding that it was an intentional death game and set up as a trap, that raises my opinion on the show, and many of those who stood as background characters. Overall assessment show-wise, I was going to give it an overall meh, and say it was a decent action show. Seeing it as an intentional kill fest, manipulated from the shadows, that made the show worth it in retrospect, and even made me excited for a hinted season 2. Now, with that, we move on to the characters, the bulk of what I talk about. But not everyone we dealt with were heroes. So let's take some time to get the honorable mentions of everyone else out of the way. Starting with the Kingdom's Council, which consists mostly of political schemers, most of which did not even matter to the show. We only dealt with 5, and Mr. Jokin the Swift Ink does not really count, so 4. Higuare the Clamp was the main one who represented the kingdom during the war. Hogent and Elia working on their own things, to where I would not even be surprised if only Hidao and Terran were the ones who knew about the plan. That said, he also does nothing but try to stick to the plan, even when the city is on fire. Now that he is officially sponsoring Alus the Star-Runner, maybe we get more of him in the future, but now he kind of adjusts the baseline we base the L3 on. Then we have Hogent the Silencer. Technically one of the highest of the ranks we see, sitting at 6th. He was an interesting position in the plot. Having a connection to the Star-Runner, bringing him into the plot, while also having the duty to hunt wyverns, which we actually do not see much of, mostly just seeing his men be reduced to paste by their stronger enemies, or having his kills stolen. But when we actually see him in action, he actually does have decent morals, especially compared to his allies. He's not winning many competitions, but he gets a gold star from me. We would talk about Terran next, as she also is out of the way instead of in the middle of the action. Terran was the one who led the rebellion, the one who was the mother of her men, the one who pushed forth the devastation that would come about. However, at the 11th hour, we get the truth. Everything was to gather all the dangers in the world in one place in order to try to force them to kill each other. So while Terran spends most of everything as mastermind instead of being in the midst of the action, all of it was in order to bring about her death, knowingly. When you take that into account, Terran might be one of the most interesting of the characters, even if I do not have much to say on her. Finally, we have Elia the Red Tag. Now her, we have a few things on which to say, particularly that, unlike her fellows, she was in the middle of the conflict and fighting against Ishura. Well, kind of. At the very least, she spends all her time beside the World-Word, trying to do all she could to get the upper hand. Elia has two sides to her. First, we have the woman with the instincts of an assassin. She spends the entire battle of the city-state worrying about secrets getting out, tying up loose ends. She brought out the World-Word for the tournament only, and does not even want to be caught up in the battle in the city in the first place. All she wants is Lana to die, and for her and Kai to be on their way. No one none the wiser. And she is willing to kill anyone to allow that to happen. However, despite all of the manipulation and conniving, there's plenty to show that she is growing an affection for Kai, becoming the mask she has been pretending to be. She diverts her plans multiple times, all to allow Kai to do what she thinks is right, even though multiple times it goes against what the smart approach would be. We only get so much of it next to her manipulative self, but it is there. In the end, she does choose the assassin, silencing Lana in a way that Kai would not be able to realize. However, the last scene has more of an air of protectiveness. Elia seems to see Kai more than just a tool to win the competition, but as someone she takes pride in seeing her stand strong, and believing she will be able to win the fight, no issue. Elia stands between two worlds, but hopefully a potential second season will give her a chance to decide which path to take. Now, moving on outside the council, first we have Lana the Spy. She found herself in the important position of both being the one to bring two of the Shoras in, and also being a spy for the other side, and therefore the reason a third ended up in the city. Then she served as motivation, the World-Word making it a point to save her, while the Red Tag made a point to confirm her death, to stop people from being able to learn about the World-Word. And that's it. Unfortunately for Lana, she is not an important character, but a plot device to keep editors moving. She did not even really have a personality to be described, just an opportunist way to sell her services to the highest bidder, and a coward who sets up others to be killed, but does all she can to run away to save herself. In the end, the only marks she made are the ones made by others. Second is Yuno. Yuno has been with us since the beginning, but you would be forgiven for forgetting that fact. Sure, we did jump around with characters for a bit, but Yuno, since the beginning, has always been a background character. She lived happily in her hometown, just learning magic and hanging with her best friend. Then her world fell apart, her city was destroyed, and she became sidekick to one of the Shoras. She starts out looking for revenge against who knows. While Samurai was the first target of her anger, then it quickly shifted to some random person on the city-state side before it settled on Dakai. Even as far as revenge stories go, hers is incoherent and, at the end of the day, pointless really, as all she really ends up doing is watching Shoujiro fight. She hardly even acts as a motivation, as the guy already just wants to fight. But what positive can I say on her? Well, at the very least, in the end, she's good at what she does. While her character arc has much to be desired, she is really good at shooting arrows, and, in the end, it was that which led to my favorite fight. But honestly, I do not really have much more to say on her. Terran and Elia far surpass her in the regular human category. Now that we have the extras out of the way, let's turn to the Showa themselves. Those deemed too dangerous to be left alive, whose existence needs to be exterminated at all costs, and to get the show rolling. We start with those which are dead, or undead, because we have one who lived but seems to have no interest in coming back next season. So we start with Shalk, the Sound Slicer. Shalk, all walking skeleton, is the most mysterious Showa of the ones we saw. He was a man with little past, recruited by the city-state as a way for them to have them by having potential information on the former Demon King, who was a potential source of his reanimation. Of the ones who are on the city-state side, he is one who clearly says he does not care about the place's fate, just as long as he gets paid. We get to see him in a fight against Shoujiro, and he manages to do well, not only avoiding the attacks, but walking away without dying again. Higuare did most of the killing of the squadron, so we not actually get to see him go all out in his attacks until some snippets at the end, maybe, but even so, we can tell he is strong enough to be there. But that's it. He shows up at some meetings, but he just made clear he is an out-and-out mercenary. He gets what he wants in the end from Terran, and he walks away to pursue his goals. And with that, he really did not do much of anything. In the end, there's still a chance of him to serve his role as a wild card in the coming battles, if he comes back. But at this point, he was just there. His appearance as bone dry as he himself is. An utterly disappointing show from Shalk. Starting off with actual death, we start with the first one who actually dies, Higuare the Phlemic. The Showa are unique in their own ways, but Higuare definitely made an impact, to the point I was truly surprised when he was the first one out. The flashbacks we were able to see of him, the rogue monster who just worked to survive, becoming an emotionless killing machine who just kept killing day to day in the arena, then the owner of the arena, and then random monsters, until he eventually cut his way to the city-state. But then unexpectedly, he became the first to die, placed opposite the World-Word, and used as the first real test in combat of her powers. Our Mandrake had plenty going for him, his many arms and poison, but he went up against someone who had an immunity to his poison, even if temporarily, and he was killed from behind by a second opponent, who causes the death of whoever tries to kill him. And so, who was shaping up to be one of my top fighters ended up jobbing. In the end, Higuare's death comes from complacency. He quickly adapted early in life to being able to fight and survive, but he quickly developed a battle strategy which allowed him to take on any normal opponent with ease. I hate to say this, but there might be a chance that most of the Showa would be able to take him out, though some might have been exchanges instead of outright defeats. It was only by his own poor luck that he went up against two who were guaranteed to outdo him. Next is Ragnejee at the Sunset Ring, as well as Curte. These two come in a pair. We see the two early on, being on the side of the city-state, at least on surface level, and are actually the most dangerous part of the city-state's army. Ragnejee having an army of Rivans loyal to him, and Curte being the only thing that can truly keep Ragnejee in line, though his grudge with the Star-Runner being a close second. Either way, Ragnejee is tagged early on as a threat, if for no other reason than that he has an army all his own. It is not long until we learn about messages being sent outside of the city, and it is only a little longer before we learn they are being written in Braille, and Curte is the main suspect. But with the tryst part of the plot before us, the one question which we never actually answered was why. Did she intend to betray the town, for some reason working against her adopted mother for some ulterior motive? Or did she also know the plan, that the town was going to be sacrificed as a scapegoat, and was charged by Terran herself to leak the information? Unfortunately, she and Ragnejee both died before we understood her motive, leaving in a loose thread we can only speculate on. But on the other end, there was a fight between Ragnejee and the Star-Runner, with Ragnejee giving his all to prove that not taking the same path, not choosing to leave of his own violation, was not a wrong choice. And he pulled out all the stops, using his perfect command of his brainwashed brethren to push the Star-Runner into a corner. However, just using them as disposable pawns yielded no fruit, and his strategies fell apart all because he was determined to defeat the enemy in front of him, not paying attention as to the conditions of the battlefield changes. To the point he ran out of pawns, leaving his rival alive and the city ablaze. In the end, the two of them died together, shot through with the same bullet from the Star-Runner, all while Hogent continues to not understand what is going on around him. But regardless, they died together, having been tied to one another since the day they both went sane again. Whatever their relationship was, whether it be more sibling or more lover, whether it was as payment for their individual sins or whether it was unjust, in the end they remained as one. They were of two separate worlds, and they were the bridge between Ravenkind and humankind. Ragnejee betrayed his people, mind-controlled them, and used them till they were all dead. Curte betrayed the townspeople, regardless of the reason, and was one of the reasons the town ended up burning. The only ones they had in the end were each other, which I believe the only complaints they would have is that the other had to die too. Then we have another personal favorite of mine, Nihilo the Vortical Stampede. I mean, they stood out in the opening, and I was excited for her to actually cut loose from the moment she first appeared. I was not surprised that the 3 episodes of her turning around, just wrecking everything, was as enjoyable a time as it was. Though she was, in the end, like a lot of these, taken far too soon. I mean, you see how much destruction she is able to rain down when she actually got started? No, more than that. I did not see a single soldier from the Mage City marching into town until after the battle was already over. The death of the entire army of the city-state was all her, minus of course a certain attacking fire, and brought the city down virtually single-handedly. She was amazing from start to finish. And then in the actual battle against Dakai, the amazing combination of the tank-like outer hull of her true body and the usefulness of the silk in its weaves left her with the advantage the entire fight. She brought out devastating abilities that would have brought an end to anyone who was not Ishura. If it was not for being injured by a certain swordsman earlier, she would have wiped the entire city off the map without breaking a sweat. But unfortunately, she did find herself against a bandit who was master of his skills. But still, it was such a far-off method that no one would have expected it. Though them being sure, the unexpected should really have been the thing she was expecting. But unfortunately, with all that power, with all that destruction, with all that absolute beauty, once her insides were made outsides, there was little hope of her turning things around at that point. What is the lesson here? Well, it is that there is a difference between a regular person and those who are special like the Shoa. True, that much is obvious, but being able to slaughter wave after wave of civilians playing soldiers. One at a Shoa was able to cut through her uncuttable body, and the other was able to capitalize on that and expose her weakness. She was unstoppable to any amount of humans, but when it came to Edashura, she was just another monster who could easily be taken out. And our final death, we have Dakai the Magpie. Dakai was one of the highlights of the show. From the very first time we see him, we see a man with his eyes on everything around him. We not only learn he stole a core from one of the automatons, causing a tragedy in the first episode, but also quickly see him hunt down and dispatch an intelligence network which had infiltrated the city, artfully eliminating their numbers quickly, and getting the information he wanted. All that without being a swordsman. He quickly becomes the boogeyman of the city-state, being the most loyal member of the Terran's men, tracking down the spies of the city, and fighting the invaders himself, while all the rest of his allies were reduced to bloody smears by the Vortical Stampede. And let's not forget the greatest part of his offense, when he used his skills as the true rogue to unlock the spider's back through use of an existing wound, a poisoned sword, and a guess at his opponent's nervous system. He single-handedly took on one of the strongest among them, and won. But it was not real power which did him in, but pure skill. As he had said multiple times, he is not a swordsman. Well, unfortunately for him, his opponent was. When swords were drawn, when swords were traded, he acted as a thief and took a sword chipped, unable to cut under normal circumstances. And his opponent, even with the legendary sword, would still have been able to cut him with the dulled blade. In the end, Dakai proved a skilled spy master, but had no chance of victory in a direct confrontation. In the end, Dakai shows that knowing yourself is important, and knowing your opponent is just as important. Dakai said time and time again he was not a swordsman, but he ended up going head-to-head against one. If he had known who he was up against, a direct confrontation would probably have been the last path he chose. Even his skills as a bandit could only take him so far against the real deal. Speaking of, let's start with the four survivors. Starting off, the first Ishura we meet, we have Shoujiro the Willow-Sword, the isekai protagonist who came from another world with Yagyu-style sword skills and readiness to fight. So first, to the negatives. He is, outside of combat, about as exciting as an isekai protagonist. He just wants to fight. He picks up a random girl off the side of the road to travel with him. He has no interest to the deeper themes going on around him. All he cares about is fighting. Thankfully for him, that fighting helps make it up. As stated before, Shoujiro is the true swordsman to Dakai's bandit. We see him able to use his sword style to cut what should not be cut. And that is not even getting into his greatest technique, the ability to use his opponent's strength against them. From the arm of a giant robot to Dakai's sword to finish him off, Shoujiro knows how to show off at all times. Which, let's talk about that last fight for a second, because I love it. Usually in the Clash of Swords, fiction usually has a drawn-out battle with idiots clashing their swords together until they should be as dull as butter knives. That last fight is how real swords fights are. A few swings and the match is decided. They both attack each other with their own swords, ended up trading blades. Then the real superiority in the Blade Master is shown when Shoujiro's sword, the one which has been fighting with the whole time, is as dull as a butter knife, and Dakai, not a swordsman, can only use the dull blade to break some ribs at most. Shoujiro, on the other hand, uses Dakai sword to cut him in half as if he was butter. Truly marvelous. So yes, going forward, Shoujiro needs work in the social department to actually become a compelling protagonist. However, as a man who loves sharp pointy objects, I recognize Shoujiro is all skill, and cannot wait to see him in more fights. Second to appear in the series is Alus the Star-Runner. A rival without a pack, one who has made a name for himself as an adventurer, collecting various items from across the country, slaying various monsters, claiming various kills, making him closest to an archetype of a hero as we know them. He has from the beginning been different, blue to the red of the other rivals, with a third arm. He has never wanted to belong to a pack, but he never really needed anyone else. All he had were adventures, all he needed were treasures, and by the time we first meet him, he has become known as the greatest adventurer in the known world. Then, when we first meet him, it is not him we see, but a dragon, an almighty being to anyone else, torn to pieces by Alus' handiwork, to the point I was actually surprised to see it was still alive. But it was not for long, because when the Star-Runner came back, the dragon stood no chance as both shield and hand cannon ripped it to shreds. The second show we meet, but one whose introduction packed an appropriate punch. What makes Alus so intimidating is not skill like some of the other Showa, but because he has been traveling and has collected enough items to put Link to shame. We see a shield that can block anything, blades that can cut remotely, a hand cannon which can blast away a dragon, and fire which follows a specific path to spring at enemies. And in the end, the weapon of mass destruction also is now in his possession. Imagine all the treasures we have yet to see in the coming tournament, especially now that he is competing. The one with the least reason to fight, even the destruction of the city-state and his own battle war at his heart. The tournament is different from his usual dungeon crawls, but I would like to see how he competes against the raw skills of others. Then we have ourselves the most powerful of the Showa, Kai the Willow-Sword. In a world of magic, she can cast it with simple words and in ways far stronger than anyone else we see in the show. She is the secret ace in the hole for Elia. That's, you can down me on YouTube long videos, keep messing up my words, but the secret ace in the hole for Elia, and currently the favorite to win the tournament. On the powers of the Willow-Sword, there truly is no other match among the Showa. She is able to stop the fires throughout a town, track anyone with a simple paper airplane, and cause fruit to instantly grow on a tree. The most impressive feat, of course, is when she goes against Higuare, and she manages to stop anything from hurting her or her companions. Being able to do massive showy attacks is one thing, but the fact she can stop other Showa from harming her makes her the favorite to win. But her biggest weakness is that she's just a child. She at no point tries to kill anyone. Her movements trying to save others and stop damage from being done. The two people we have seen her interact with directly were spies and trying to kill each other, but she had no idea about that. While she did her best to save the entire town, she never once showed an interest in doing harm to others, just to make sure others do not die. When it comes to her actual ability to win the tournament, she is definitely the most powerful and has that advantage. But she is also the most ready to trust others. If someone comes from the front, they might have some problems. but since she has no desire to kill others in a tournament designed to secretly have most of the competitors die, she has a disadvantage of not having the willingness to do anything, or really have any intention to do so. So for her to actually win the tournament, she is currently in last place. Which brings us to first place in that regard. Our final assassin himself. And the last two, Kuze, the passing disaster, and Dakai, the sound slicer, the angel which follows in his shadow. Kuze was one who was never part of a large battle, but their shadow has been across the war since the first time we saw them. Kuze himself does not do much to leave an impression. Something which, as assassin, I see as a plus, but for the most part is just as his title suggests, passing through the scenes. We did have one episode which focused on him, but even then, he was passive and he did little to actually influence the story outside of being the target the attackers focused on when things started going wrong for them. Dakai is interesting, but on the other side, limited. Only Kuze can see her, and she does not talk. She's one of the greatest weapons we currently have in the show, an invisible assassin. Something which can have both more benefits than even the world would. But as a character, it is hard to put her into words. She is just a satellite character to someone who himself is just going through the motions. That said, the last we see of Kuze, he is determined to go to the tournament, determined to make his own mark. So at this point, we have only seen Kuze at this point, but not the Kuze he can become in the future. Of all the four competitors, Kuze is the one which has the actual ability to grow and change, now that he has determination. So to judge him fairly, we just have to wait. Which brings us to the end. All in all, I believe my assessment is that some characters were not able to shine as much as they could, based on the pace we went. However, if we do ever get a Season 2 which was set up, I'm definitely looking forward to more fights. And maybe some actual character development, hint hint. But as it stands, an overall decent show that I recommend to those who can overlook some shallow characterization to enjoy some action. Well, with all that said, I'll see you all next time.